Welcome to the Jury Thinks What podcast. Part of the Lawyer Minds ecosystem, the Jury Thinks What podcast discusses everything there is to know about trying cases, from preparing the case before the lawsuit is filed, all the way to trial. And most importantly, how to understand what the jury is thinking. During our journey, we'll be talking to some of the brightest trial lawyers from many walks of life. What makes them successful? What makes them different? Do they have secrets to dealing with the jury? Let's find out. Here's your host of the Jury Thinks What podcast, Saul Gruber.
Thank you, and welcome to the Jury Thinks What podcast by trial lawyers for trial lawyers. I'm your host, Saul Gruber from Gruber Trial Consulting, and we're recording this on the Lawyer Minds ecosystem, available wherever you get both video and audio podcasts. Today we have a special guest, and it's one of those lawyers. I think you know what I mean. Whenever he says something or does something, we all listen. We have his books and we follow his systems and we help make them our own, and we get big verdicts because of it. And yes, I am talking about Keith Mitnick. If you don't have Don't Eat the Bruises on trial guides, you're making a mistake. Not only do you need the book, but you need to read it, you need to highlight it and refresh before each trial. And Keith has a new book just came out on trial guides called Deeper Cuts. And it's just really special. And I think you're really going to enjoy listening to this interview almost as much as I enjoyed doing it. And without any further delay, here's Keith Mitnick. And again, this is Saul Gruber from the Jury Thinks What, a podcast by trial lawyers for trial lawyers. And as promised, we're here with Keith Mitnick. Hey, Keith, how you doing?
I am doing great, and I am very happy to be here with you.
So, Keith, as everybody knows, if you're listening to this and you're a subscriber to this podcast, you've heard me reference Keith's Don't Eat the Bruises book in virtually every podcast, along with some David Ball stuff and a couple other books. And I'm thrilled that Keith said yes to come on and talk to us. And one thing I see, Keith, you have a new book called Deeper Cuts, also a trial guides book.
It is, and I'm very excited about it. It's like I've had people say, well, if I don't Eat the Bruises, should I get the new one, not the old one? I go, no. The old one establishes, I think of it almost like a computer system. The old one is the framework. And you got to have that for the new one. But the new one is like you plug and update. It's almost like an app that you got an update. But the stuff that's in the new one, to me, is really exciting and takes it to a total another level. But you still need the first one to get there.
So let's back up a little bit and talk. I mean, I went on your webpage, and of course, it's through the Morgan & Morgan, the Size Matters law firm. And since I'm in Miami, I'm very familiar with you guys. And there are just so many books and videos that you have out there to help people like me figure out what we're doing. What got you into teaching and not just doing?
I think it was in my blood because both of my parents were public school teachers. So I had that in me. Didn't go down that path, but I probably have it in my genes and it comes natural. And honestly, the driving force, aside from maybe the genetics behind it, is I had great mentors when I was a baby lawyer with hair hanging down to here, full head of hair and a smaller waistline. And I think back and think if I had not had them sharing their wisdom and their skills and their suggestions and their mentoring, I would have been different. I probably had enough in me. I'd have done good, but they made a substantial difference in the end product. And I realized the longer I did it, the more I realized how few people really had that gift given to them of truly hands-on mentors. And I thought, and there are also very few people that get to try as many cases as I do. You know, when I had my own law firm, I was lucky to try 3 a year, some years, none.
Right.
Even though I was always trying to get in court. So, and now since I came over almost 25 years ago with John Morgan got me over and I closed my firm and came under the promise of teach us how to teach our lawyers to try cases the right way. And all you got to do is teach and try and teach. And I didn't have to work cases up anymore, which I enjoy working them up, but it meant I'm trying, 12, 14, 15, 16, sometimes more trials a year. So the combination of the really being gifted, blessed with these great mentors, together with the opportunity a little further down the road to just try cases. So when I had an idea, rather than forget what it was, because I thought about it a year earlier in my last trial, I got to try it next week and the next week. And so I started figuring that worked, keep it. That didn't, throw it out. And I started amassing a lot of useful stuff. And I realized, you know what? I want to share this with people that A, maybe didn't get the head start I got, and B, don't have the ongoing opportunity to keep advancing it. And because I really deeply believe I have opportunities that I want to play it back. I want to play it forward. I want to share it with people like it was shared with me. I think that's part of it's just baked into our profession.
Yeah.
And to hold back and say, I'll show you, some stuff, but I'm gonna keep my best to myself, I think is bad karma. I couldn't do it. And I'm just the opposite. I really, really wanted to do what I could, because I deeply believe in that concept of a rising tide lifts all boats.
Right.
We are all fighting the same enemy, which is injustice. And it honestly, when I'm laying on my deathbed, I will treasure all the verdicts, and particularly big ones, but I think I will treasure more the emails I've gotten from people that said, thank you, that's made a difference to me.
Well, that's great. And it's funny because I was once a vice president of the New Jersey Trial Lawyers Association. So I was always surrounded with like-minded people, that it wasn't if we were going to go to trial, it was what day were we going to pick the jury. And that, coupled with being chair of a number of committees with AAJ, I thought that was normal. And it wasn't until I moved away from practicing a couple of years ago and more consulting, and I'm with a bunch of lawyers that don't have that same mindset, that I realized how lucky I was to A, also have a mentor when I started out, and B, just being around the concept of trying cases and having dinners with other lawyers where we're comparing things, not just work, but really things that just blew up in our faces. Yeah. And kind of workshop it. So that's what's great about your book. It gives people who don't have that opportunity that you had, and I had certainly to a lesser extent, the ability to learn and read. In Don't Eat the Bruises, one of the things that I found so impressive about that book was the idea of you simplifying things and making them into a system. How important is that in you being able to try 12 to 20 cases a year?
It is so important. Look, I've been to my share of seminars where I sat in the audience and listened rather than presented. And one thing I always swore I wouldn't do is most of what I saw was somebody telling war stories that were very impressive. And I went away going, wow, he or she's a great lawyer. But I also went away with nothing I was ever going to use, because it was some unique thing they did that was a wow, but it was just for that case. And I thought, if someone is going to take the time to sit and listen to me, I want to leave them with things that are useful, and as many of them as I can. And so as I started presenting both within the firm and then around the country, and even before the book, I realized that to be of maximum usefulness, systems is what it takes, not one-off stories, not even an individual strategy, which can be reproduced. But the max, that's better than a war story that's useless. There's use to a gem. But what's even better is if you can create what I call systems that simply work. So right. I made a conscious effort to say, all right, these are the things that you're doing over and over that work. How can I now put them into a reproducible system that any lawyer at any level of experience can use in any kind of case and drop it in? And then the last piece, so the systems were everything to me, rather, otherwise it's too disjointed to really rise the tide. The other thing was, I wanted it to be something that wasn't just do exactly what I said and memorize it, like we were doing a play of Hamlet. If you miss one word, everybody in the audience that knew Hamlet would know he blew the line. I I wanted it to be something you could take it, and if you liked it, hook, line, and sinker, great. But if it didn't fit your personality, you could take the concept that came with it and adjust it that fit to you. And then you could even start recreating in your own direction and build your own systems off of it. So the systems, it was a combination of winning ideas put into winning simple systems that simply worked. And once I got, and that wasn't the easiest thing, because I kind of did them intuitively. They were mine.
Right.
But to communicate them, I realized they needed more structure. So once I got the structure thing going, I ended up getting a call from Rick Friedman, Rules of the Road, who's one of the greatest minds doing this stuff and a dear friend and a great lawyer. And he called me out of the blue and he said, I don't even know I got my cell phone. It was my cell phone. I'm driving down. I remember where I was. I was driving down Orange Avenue in the middle of Orlando. The phone rings and I pick it up and said, hello. And they said, hey, this is Rick Friedman. And I had no clue it was the Rick Friedman. It's not that unusual name. I thought, and they acted like they knew me and I didn't know them. So I faked it.
Right.
Hey, good to hear from you. And next thing he says, listen, trial guides need some new authors. We don't want the same folks doing it over. I've been watching some of your stuff. I want to hook you up if you're interested to write a book. And I said, well, I've started one, but I wasn't sure how I'd get it published. And I said, by the way, this is Rules of the Road, Rick, right? He goes, yeah. Then I confessed I didn't know who the hell you were. And we've been friends ever since. And that was the introduction. So it took it to the next level from creating systems that I was talking on to writing them. And so when I've come to the second book, The Deeper Cuts, I took those same exact systems and all I did is update them for trial, add to them, and then take them back in time so you could apply the same systems to the workup phase so you could increase your chances of settlement at a really fair value. And if it didn't settle, it'd be ready to plug and go for the don't eat the bruises systems at trial. And then I did a lot of others. I did a new thing on damages and I did a section on medical malpractice. I added some I added something that I love, which is a process that I use that created all of the systems. I call it the wisdom of the wise. And I formalized what I did intuitively. How do you come up with these ideas? And then created some new stuff that kind of almost a formula will help you get the right words. Talked about trials in the time of COVID, showed how a lot of the problems we see in cases really aren't problems or wannabe problems. You still got to deal with them, but it changes your world when you realize I don't have a case riddled with problems. I got great cases I love. And I know now how to show a jury I love them and show the defense why they're so lovable.
You know, there's a couple topics I really want to focus on with you because they're pets of mine. I absolutely agree with the topics that the defense thinks is great for them. I love the idea of you taking them, adopting them, making your own, and showing everybody how they're good for you, just cutting the legs out from the defense. That's something I believe is the difference between winning trials and losing trials.
None of us like them to have their hands around our throat choking us, laughing. And if you can flip them over and get your hands on their neck, and now you're laughing, it's one of the true joys of what we do. And it allows us to get real justice for our clients.
Exactly. But one of my pets, and it has been for at least 20 years, is framing the case.
Everything.
I mean, it really is everything. And every time I hear somebody call a minor impact soft tissue case a missed case, my back gets up a little. And I remember I was in Kentucky because, being from New Jersey, we don't use phrases like wreck, right? We just don't use it. It's not in our lexicon. And I was in Kentucky, 15, 20 years ago, giving a seminar on nursing home cases. And I heard Hans Poppy use a phrase, a car wreck. And I thought, wow, that's the greatest thing I ever heard. And I can tell you, I'm in New Jersey, I'm in Newark, Camden, and I'm trying cases saying car wrecks. And people are kind of looking at me funny, but they stopped calling them accidents. And right. I think framing the case is so important. Tell us what you do with that.
Change everything in the framework. I'll give you an example, something new I've just started teaching on and using that I'm really excited about is we all think, now lay people and your potential jurors think this because we think it. We think a trial is one big he said, she said. It's just a big factual dispute. if you think about it, most of your trials, there's certainly going to be some factual disputes, but most of them, we agree on a ton of facts.
Right.
Most of the case is a big dispute, not over the facts, over the conclusions from the facts. And when you realize that, and then you realize bias comes into play, not because people are going to put in their fingers in there and ignore the evidence in the what's being in the law. It's you're going to take those facts, the evidence, and there's a big space between them and a conclusion. The bias comes into play in that space between. So it becomes bias. It becomes my decisions based on the facts plus those life experiences and beliefs or things impacting my conclusions. And I've developed some new things for voir dire off of that. But on this framing issue and the picking the right words, I realized, gosh, that explains so much on why those words matter. I'm going to give you one analogy, if you bear with me a second.
Oh, please.
This is really brings it home. And this isn't the analogy, but you can change your perspective just a little and reach a totally opposite conclusion looking at the same thing. For example, you walk up to somebody who looks just like somebody from the back.
Right.
And you tap them on the shoulder and go, hey, and they turn around and it's somebody you don't know and it's embarrassing. Well, now, all it was a change of perspective. It's the same evidence. It's the same facts you're looking at. You just looked at it from a different angle. And a really telling one is we've all heard of the word paradigm shift. And I remember the first time I read it in a book, I thought, what is it? What's this paradigma thing? I had to look it up to see how you said it. It's a weird word. And I didn't know what it meant. And I read it. And then I've read a little story that explained what it meant. And I want to, a lot of folks will probably have heard it, but regardless, I want to tell it to you because it makes this point of how important framing is. And the story is a man's coming home on a subway in New York City. He's got his head down. He's got his 3 children with him. And the kids are running loose and bumping people, knocking coffee over, hitting newspapers. And everybody on the train's looking down at this guy like, you jackass, will you get your kids under control? Until the person next to him can't take it anymore and taps him. And he looks up and his eyes are kind of bloodshot and red looking. And he says, I'm so sorry. I just came from the hospital. My wife unexpectedly died of a heart attack. I picked the kids up from their school. We're on the way home. They don't know. When I get home, I got to tell them. I don't know how I'm going to tell them. And I don't know how we're going to go on with life without her. She's the center of their life and mine. And that lady had a paradigm shift. And so she then whispers and it passes through the train. And now all of those people who are cranky and tired and going home are now helping entertain the kids.
Right.
And it went from adding one fact. The wife just died of cancer. Died of a heart attack. It went from a conclusion of bad dad, rude man, to a conclusion of sad dad, broken man, just by adding a fact. And so when we stand up an opening, if we were to say, my client was involved in an accident on so-and-so, people say accident happened. They don't have to think it. It's just in wired.
Absolutely.
If you get up and say wreck or crash, crashes make you cringe. Wrecks sound like twisted metal. You have a different impact. All I did was change a word. If I say to them, what's a typical thing? Your client stopped going to the doctor and they're going to say gaps in treatment. If you get up and say to the jury, there was a gap in treatment in my client, but now what are they going to hear when they hear but? Everything after but's going to be an excuse.
An excuse.
Bullshit. It's just bullshit. Here comes the bullshit. It's an excuse. Change it to make matters worse. Now you're already starting out different than but. And now where do we go from there? We aren't going to go to but. Look, she didn't go to the doctor because she was busy. And now people, well, you must not be hurt. We go to make matters worse. She was going to the doctor regularly. Why? You're going to hear from the evidence. She was going to the doctor regularly because she had hope. She had hope for a cure. But then about 8 months in, she got some really bad news. You've reached maximum medical improvement and it's a permanent injury. There is no cure. So now my client is hit with that horrible news And the motivation that had her going and taking a half a day, because let's face it, every time you go to a doctor's office, it's a half a day between driving and sitting in the waiting room. They call it a waiting room for a reason. You wait and you finally get done and get to drive home. You've blown a half a day. She did it over and over because she had hope for a cure. Once she learned there was no hope for a cure, she had to get on with the business of life, because she can't keep sitting there just to hear the same thing. By the way, lady, we can't do anything other than maybe make you feel temporarily a little better. So now she has to live with that the rest of her life. That is the subway. You just went from jackass, take care of your kids, to poor guy, let's help. Just by framing it different, picking the right words.
How do you in your system go about figuring out which words you want to change and frame? Or is that something you do with every word?
I don't do it with every word, because then we'd be tongue-tied. I do it with those what I call anchor words, the words that we're going to build our case around, the words we're going to repeat, and they need to be perfect. And by perfect, I mean powerful as you can get them and unassailable. You don't want to pick stuff that backfires on you, they turn on you. And so I do it with thesauruses. I do it studying it. I do it because I've done it forever and it comes natural to me. And I realized I teach on it, but I had a list. It was in Don't Eat the Bruises. I got a list.
Yeah.
You can go down the list, don't say this, don't. And I realized that's all helpful, but it was limited to what, 15 words maybe. And I'm like, all right, we need a lot more words than 15.
We really do. I mean, just for our listeners, if you don't have Don't Eat the Bruises, I don't know why you don't, but this is one of the reasons you get Don't Eat the Bruises. This is one of my dog-eared sections. Crash, don't say accident. Don't say whiplash, say head snap back suddenly. In my world, when I was still trying cases, I did all nursing home cases. We never had a decubitus ulcer. We had a pressure injury. Why?
Yeah.
Because unrelieved pressure causes a pressure injury. We made sure that that we didn't never use the phrase regulations, because we weren't sure what people would do with that. We used the phrase requirement. And we would work on that daily. We would do focus groups on that.
Hey, okay, look, you say, here's one, following too closely. Well, guess what? Everybody that rides on a highway at 5 o'clock is following about an inch from the car in front of them, because we're in bumper to bumper traffic.
Right.
So you don't know what it means. So what do you say instead? Tailgating. Even better, riding your bumper. You know what it does? It pisses you off. You're going, that son of a bitch, someone did it to me this morning. It's just a different reaction. And what came to me was this. If I'm going to preach on the power and importance of words matter, I need to do better in giving you a finite list. I need to figure out how it is I'm figuring out these words.
Exactly.
So
That's what I want to know.
All right, this is, I'm going to give you a preview out of Deeper Cuts. Here it is. And it's so cool. I was sitting watching a movie. What was it? A series on Netflix or one of those streamers. It's called Broadchurch.
Sure.
And it was a good show. And my wife and I are watching it. And it's set in a little town on the coast in England, in one of those sheer cliff towns. And it's a rocky looking coast. Nothing like I'm here in Florida. And if you look out the window, I'm staring at the Atlantic Ocean here in south of Daytona. Total different look. And we're watching that. And I said to my wife may have said it to me. I don't even remember who said it. One of us said, well, no one would call that a beach. And a light went off. And I said, listen, pause it. I got to get, you've just inspired me. I started writing over it, and then we talked, and she's kind of my muse. And next thing I started creating this, and I realized I now have a formula that will guide you reliably and repeatedly to the right words. And it took a little while to get the clunkiness out, but I now got it out. So I'm going to give you the end product. First of all, the difference between a right word and a wrong word, or an unpredictable word, the reason a word is really good, like wreck or crash, and the reason there's a bad word, accident, has to do with memory. We have life experiences and we have memories. Certain words are going to, not with everybody, but with a high level of predictability, good percentage chance. is going to trigger a memory. And that memory is going to create momentum. There's going to be emotional momentum that comes from that word. Not all words do, but certain words do. Then I realized, okay, I want words that aren't neutral. I want a word that's going to have a predictable memory and momentum, emotional flow from it. And then I realized there are two kinds of memory and momentum that comes out of one of those memorable words that trigger memories, that have emotions attached to them. And one's a positive and one's a negative. Positive is the one, the momentum I want, negative is the one I don't. So I had to put labels on them. So I finally came up with these words. There are inert words, which are too ambiguous to predict what memory I'm going to trigger. So they're risky business. Then there are activator words. Inert words, activator words. Activator words will reliably trigger a memory in most people that you can predict what it is. But then we don't stop, because there are two kinds of activators, negative and positive.
Right.
So we have inert words. I don't know what the hell it's going to do. We have activator words. I do know what it's going to do, but I better figure out what it's going to do before I use it, because it may blow up on me. It may be a negative activator.
Right.
So let's apply that system, that formula, to some of these things, that I use, and we'll see how it works. Take the crash or wreck versus accident. What is accident? It's an activator. What's it activating? It's a negative activator. I can hear my mom right now, my brother and I chasing each other through the house and breaking a lamp. And my dad was going to wring her neck. And I can hear my mom saying, Nick, it was just an accident. Accidents happen, and no one should be punished for accidents. It's a powerful activator. It's just the wrong one. It's a negative. If you then say crash or wreck, there's nothing ambiguous about crash or wreck. It is not inert. It's an activator, but it's a positive. You cringe when you hear them. You picture mangled metal. That's a positive activator. That's a keeper. Now, I'd use the other example, following too closely. Following too closely is not the right word for a different reason. It's an inert word. I don't know whether people are going to picture someone tailgating them, or whether they're going to picture going home in the evening or coming to work in rush hour traffic, bumper to bumper. I don't know. So it's completely, one person's going to react one way, someone else is different. Therefore, there's no predictability. Therefore, it's inert. Therefore, if it is one of those anchor words, I call them spotlight words, because they illuminate your pathway. Right. If it's going to be one of my spotlight words in the case, I don't want it, because one person will be great for, and the next one will be bad for.
Let me ask you this question.
On the other hand, let me just finish that
sure.
one. No hush. Then let's take tailgate or riding your bumper. Well, that's damn sure an activator, and it's a positive activator, because everyone's had someone tailgate, and you're looking on the window, and all you want to do is pull over and curse them out. So that's you go down my list. I can do it on every one of them now. When I did it, I wasn't doing that. I just intuitively went to thesauruses and looked and thought, and I try so many cases, and I'm a natural thinker that way. I'd end up with the right word. But I thought, how's that? All right, I've given people this list. These people, I want to help people say, here's how you get there. And I realized I probably didn't know I was doing it. I certainly didn't have the labels. Sure. That's what I was doing. And now I've got a system I can hand over, and you can do it.
So now I have that system, and I was always doing the same thing, certainly not as good as you and not to the same effect as you. And
I suspect you did it pretty damn well. But go ahead.
The question I have is, now we have that, and we sit down, and maybe I look to my wife, my partner, somebody, and say, what do you think of this word? What do you think of that word? But I'm having trouble saying, is that a positive act? Is it a positive or a negative? Is there something, like, I'm a big, I love to do focus groups, even if they're online focus groups and very easy. How do you reach the conclusion that it's either positive or negative?
As I try to think, here's the hard part. You got to get out of your own memories, your own subjective view, because then you're going to always have your reaction. Not everyone's that.
Exactly.
But I would say, let's pick another one. Throw me one. Is there one on my list? You have my
absolutely. Negligent trucker.
All right, great. Trucker. So trucker is the issue.
Right.
Here's what I would do on trucker. And I'll try to walk through and say how I actually work it. And by the way, a big component of this is you got to have good thesauruses.
Yes.
Because you have a limited vocabulary. You may know all the words, or you're going to think of them. And I don't have weeks to think about this. I take a thesaurus. I pick a word and I start looking. And what the beauty of the thesauruses do is oftentimes the root, or not just a different word for the word, it'll take you to a similar word with a little different meaning. And you go, damn, I wasn't even on the right base word. That the root word is over here, is still not the right one, but it's a hell of a lot closer. And then I chase that lead. I'll give you, before we run through that, I will give you, anyone that has an iPad, I'm going to do some app a favor. Get Word Flex, like flexing a muscle. Word Flex. It spirals out all these words. It's beautiful. But it only works on an iPad.
I'll tell you how much I do follow you and I do read you is I have it. And it's crazy because it goes in almost to like a brain map of words.
It looks like a virus spreading.
It really does.
It's like one of those mind mapping apps.
Yeah, no, I do use it, and it's phenomenal and better than a normal thesaurus.
For those of you that don't have an iPad, or you don't have it with you, and I'm sitting in some office and I don't have my iPad and I'm working a problem and I'm chasing a word. Get Word Hippo. It works on your phone. You can't put WordFlex on your phone. And I've got like 10 thesaurus apps on my phone, and I have the Oxford English Dictionary online. It costs like $260 a year to be, and it's just, I'm a word nerd. I can go on there and stare at words all damn day and look at stuff. Gives you where they came from, examples from way back, but it has a historical thesaurus that'll blow you away.
Wow.
But it's expensive, and it's a little more time consuming. And I love that when I have time. That's a treat to me. But for true on the fly work, Word Hippo is not as good as WordFlex, but it's, of all my apps on my phone, it's by far the best to me. So Word Hippo, HIPPO.
That's interesting. That's good stuff.
So anyhow, let's come back out of the thesaurus world and back to this, my formula. If we were to take, what word were we on?
Trucker.
All right. So here's how I would work the problem. Now I have the formula. I would sit back and say, all right, forget for a minute, Mitnick, what you think when you hear the word trucker. What memory do you have? Use your memory, but then expand your view to what others probably have. And what do I think of trucker? And I think, when I think trucker, do I think bad? And I thought, it depends. If I think back to a kid sitting in the back of my parents' beat up station wagon and out on the road, and a truck driver going by, and my brother and I going,
exactly right.
I have warm and fuzzies.
That's my thought. Yeah.
And they also make sure I got milk and shit and eggs and stuff for breakfast. I mean, they're hardworking guys. And they're in a convoy, and and they got CBs that are really cool. And so I got good thoughts. Now, if I think of a sand truck, I live in an area that's got a bunch of sand mines around, and we always got sand, and they got the tarps that don't do shit. All they do is blow stuff on your car.
Yep.
And they're rude. And as soon as I think sand truck, I think they ought to outlaw they ought to give them their own road and don't put them out there with the rest of us. And they're assholes. So I'm going, guess what? That's inert. One person may not live near sand trucks, and it's all warm and fuzzy. One person may have thought it was the stupidest thing in the world to go, or the parents wouldn't let them. They smacked them because they did it, and they think bad there. I don't know where it's going. So then I thought, okay, what's a better word? Now you can go to the thesaurus, but all I did was really on that one, I didn't even go to the thesaurus. I said, what else can you think about a trucker? And I thought, well, what is it about sand trucks that make me mad? And I thought, well, they're road hogs. And it's kind of my way or the highway. You get out of my way because I'm bigger than you. and I'm spewing sand all over your damn car and rocks and pebbles and breaking your windshield and tough shit. They're road hogs. They're rude. So I thought, okay, how can I pick a activator word that's a positive activator rather than a negative activator or an inert that could be anything? And I thought road hog. So instead of trucker, I say road hog. Now, if it's opening and you don't want a bunch of, or my way or the highway, if I'm in opening and I'd want to avoid an objection, then I can tone it a little bit and say, look, he was driving as if it was his highway, kind of my way or the highway. Instead of trucker, and driving one of them big, gigantic, things with 18 wheels out there. And he was acting like it was his, he owned the road. Everybody get out of my way. What the evidence is going to show. And then I may slip in like a road hog. And then some objection, argumentative. And you go, yeah, probably was. Sorry, move on. You planted it.
It's interesting because growing up in the Northeast part of the country, when we think truck, we immediately think 18-wheeler, just driving 85 miles an hour. And I remember when I first learned how to drive, I would jump out of the way, didn't even want to be on the highway because of the truckers. But that's interesting. So really your system not only identifies the keywords or the spotlight words, but then you have a multi-level analysis of it going deep down.
Check yourself to make sure. And like I said, for goodness sake, we can't do that every word out of our mouth. It's those words that are really going to help tell your story, and you're going to come back to them. It's just like, here's another one. Low impact. Well, low impact means it wouldn't hurt a flea.
Right.
So what is that? That is an activator word. That is a negative activator. But if you switch it to not a lot of visible property damage, that is at least a neutral word that's accurate. And it has a chance of being a positive activator. Because some people will think when they hear that phrase, some people are going to think, when I put my car in, not a lot of visible property damage, I put my car in the shop, it came back, they said it was fixed, it never ran the same. Therefore, I might get some folks who have that reaction of there's more there than meets the eye. So
I always was fascinated, and this goes back when I tried auto cases, you're talking late 80s, early 90s. Mm-hmm. So after that, it was all nursing home. But I was always fascinated when the picture of the property damage showed no property damage, and yet the defense still felt compelled to bring in an engineer to say how an injury could never happen. And I always wondered, why would you do that when I'm going to cross-examine that engineer and get at least 5 admissions about the problems that are in there underneath that you can't really see? And make a difference. And it's really kind of what you're saying.
Probably overkill. That's why.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm a defendant and I have a picture of no damage, that's all. I'm not saying minor or anything. I'm saying no damage and showing that picture.
But then you're going to turn around and frame it in a way people understand you don't need to leave damage.
Right.
It's in my book, Don't Eat the Bruises, where you hit the back of the chair and you say it's not about the mark on the chair. It's about the unexpected, awkward jarring that causes injury.
And I really think cases are, I may be making it simplistic. Cases are won or lost by the way every key issue is framed.
Absolutely. No question. You can change. It's like that. I'm going to give you one more. I'm going to give you another example of how the framing changes the outcome. I tried a case with Matt Morgan, one of John's middle son. Fantastic lawyer, great guy, trained him. And Brian Panish out in LA helped train him. Panish is a friend of mine, but he's one of John's one of my best friends. He's also one of Panish's best friends. So
Matt's trained by you and Brian. So
yeah, he got it. We both took him under our wing. So he had some pretty good mentors.
You think?
so anyhow, Matt comes to me with a case that says it's a trip and fall sidewalk. And the defense is open and obvious. And so Matt and the lady hit her face, broke a bone in her face, lost the sense of smell. 80%, I didn't know this, 80% of your sense of taste comes from your sense of smell. So everything tastes like cardboard. So it's a big injury. Now they fought everything. They said she did not break her face. She did not have a loss of smell. She did not have a loss of taste. And by the way, it was all her own damn fault. She fell down. She had pulled over to go rescue a turtle and was walking down looking at the turtle and was worried about it. That's how it happened. And I liked the case until Matt handed me the photo. And the photo of the sidewalk, the damn thing's sticking up a good 5 or 6 inches. It's like, I've never seen anything. So if you wanted to teach what open and obvious was, just use that picture.
Right.
Broad daylight. And it's like, my first reaction is, how in the hell did she miss it? And I thought, maybe I'm trying to think, can I get out of this case gracefully and let someone else go? Because we'll be lucky to get 99% on us and 1 on them, and we may lose. However, I know better. And I caught myself and I said, cut it out. This lady that thing shouldn't have been on that sidewalk. And by the way, I left out a very good fact for us. Someone had complained, like, I don't remember, 1.5 years, 2 years earlier, and they hadn't even gone and spent 10 cents spraying exciter paint on with a yellow or red to make it more obvious. Because we learned from our expert, there's something called conspicuity. Conspicuity, there's visibility and conspicuity. Visibility is seeable. You could see it if you happen to look at the right time. Conspicuity is the constant competition for our attention.
Right.
And it means I could have seen it if I looked, but I was looking elsewhere and I didn't. And that's just light. And those exciter colors help the danger win that competition by drawing attention. So anyhow, I'm looking at the case and I said, quit. You got some good facts. It's their fault. They shouldn't have done it. And then I decided, God damn it, it's all their fault. I'm not taking one percentage point.
Not even 1%.
Not one. And that became my challenge. And I was kind of ashamed. I almost ran away chicken. And I know I'm going to go the other extreme. We're getting 0. And I thought, okay, that sounds good and it's motivational, but how the hell am I going to get there? So, and I realized this is, remember I said in the new book, I have an underlying process that creates all of the aha moments. Let me give you the process and I'm gonna apply it here. We're going to kill 2 birds in one stone. I'll give you that process. And we're also going to talk about the critical nature of framing all at once. Here's the underlying process. And I call it wisdom of the wise, WHY. And then I put an S on that, but like, why did it happen? Wisdom of the wise. In shorthand, I call it WOW, WOW for wisdom of the wise. And I realized I've done this for years. I just didn't have a label on it. And here's what wisdom of the wise says. You take a fixed fact. There's a fixed fact. Like in this case, open and obvious. I'm never going to make it not open and obvious. That's a fixed fact. Remember I said, trials are less about disputes over facts than they are conclusions.
Right.
So you take that fact, open and obvious. Wrong conclusion is it's your fault. It's your own damn fault. Right conclusion is, no, it isn't. It's your fault. Then you take the circumstances. And the answer is you want to drive it to the right conclusion. Why? Because I wouldn't be in the case if I didn't believe our client was right. So my starting point is we're in right, but this fact makes it look like we're wrong and they're right. So I'm going to fight for what I started with, which is I believe in my client's case. I'm not selling my soul to the devil. I'm not being a mercenary. I believe in my client. These bastards left that sidewalk for 2 years out there, wouldn't spend a few pennies on exciter. She got hurt. And God damn it, how am I going to get it to? She's right, they're wrong. So you fight for the right conclusion. The answer is always going to lie in staring long and hard enough at the circumstances to get the answer. I remember hearing, reading in a book one time, Sherlock Holmes' greatest asset was not his powers of observation, not his knowledge of science and medicine. It is his ability to focus on a problem long enough to solve it.
Yeah.
And that's this. You focus on the circumstances long enough to solve it, asking yourself this question. Why are we still right in spite of whatever the bad fact is, whatever the concerning fact is? That's where wisdom of the wise comes from. Why are we still right in spite of the fact this is open and obvious? Ask that question, stare at the circumstances, and it will come to you. And what will come is I'm going to reframe the presentation of that fixed fact in a winning way rather than a losing. It's their fault, not ours. So I start looking at it and staring at it and thinking about why is it they are at fault and she's not? What is it about these circumstances? And the first thing that came to me was, well, you know what? What is the underlying premise of why it's our fault. And we all have heard it. You got to look where you're walking, look where you're going. And I realized, but that's bullshit. That's cheating. That's cutting it short. It isn't looking. She wasn't not looking where she was going. She was looking at the damn turtle about to get hit. That she was looking where she was going. She was going to the turtle. And I thought what they're really saying, the real underlying reason I've reacted so badly when I saw the picture was what it really means is you ought to be looking at every step. Not where you're going, because you can look where you're going and miss it.
Right.
Why are you reacting? Because there's this inner thought, we ought to be watching where we're walking, where we're stepping, watching where you're stepping. And then I thought, okay, but that really means even if you watch where you step, if you looked away for a minute, you could miss it. You got to watch where you're stepping every step. Now I'm starting to go, okay, now we're getting somewhere. And I thought, okay, we don't watch every step. And I thought, well, it depends on the circumstances. And I thought if I'm walking in a junkyard filled with broken glass and rusty mufflers and metal, and I'm in flip-flops and there's possums snapping coming out at me, if I don't look at every step, it's on me if I kick a rusty muffler and tetanus, because under those circumstances, the only reasonable thing is to watch every step, every time, like I'm in a minefield. Then I thought, but we aren't in a junkyard in flip-flops. We're on a sidewalk. What is it called? A sidewalk. Why do they call it a sidewalk? It's designed for safe walking. Then I thought, do I watch every step on the sidewalk downtown Orlando when we go to lunch? I think, no. And I thought, what if everyone was watching every step? Well, we'd be walking with our head down and we'd be conking heads. You'd have an epidemic of TBIs. Now that people are looking in the store window, looking at the new ties, looking to see if their friends are in there, they're going to meet. A motorcycle, when you look, God, that thing's loud. You know, bird goes by and chirping, you go, look at that pretty bird. And I thought, okay, so we're not. And then I thought, the next piece came to me under the circumstances. This is one of those weird times. It's not our burden of proof, it's theirs. And I thought, what do they got to prove? It's not enough to prove that she could have seen it. If that was enough, we'd already lost. It's not enough to prove someone else would have seen it, because you're going to have jurors who think I'd have seen it, like I did.
Sure.
But that's not enough. What is enough? It's their burden. What's enough? They have to prove our client did something wrong, that our client acted unreasonably. And I thought, well, if that's the case, next time I walk to lunch, I need to get a bullhorn and start hollering, stop, heads up, heads down, look at every step. Stop looking ahead. Look at your feet. Stop. Shame on you. And what would they do? They'd think I was a lunatic. So suddenly I'm realizing under these circumstances on a sidewalk, there is absolutely doing nothing wrong, not watching every step. So guess what? Then I say, and by the way, you know what? Who knew at this particular place you didn't need to watch your step? They did. Who did nothing about it? They didn't. And then I said, it's 100% those bastards' fault. It's not my clients. I used all of that to convince myself. I converted to the jury, said basically the same thing. And I ended closing argument with, and please bring back a verdict that says, my client didn't do anything wrong, but they sure did, and recognizes the magnitude of what was taken from her in the way of health. And we ended up with, I don't remember, but it was like it was a $1 million+ verdict, zero comparative. And I tell you what, if they'd have put 1%, I'd have been pissed. And I can reproduce that over and over and over. Now, if I get a jury selection doesn't go great, maybe I get a little percentage.
Right.
If jury selection goes the way it ought to, I'm going to get 0 every time out. But the point is, I was ready to run away chicken from the case.
Right. So you're looking at the facts and saying to yourself, why? Why
are we still right? In spite, it's got a little rhyme. Why are we still right in spite of, and then plug in the fixed fact? And wrong conclusion, right conclusion. And just keep this, everything I said. What were the circumstances? Their burden. What was enough? What wasn't enough? What were the circumstances? Well, we're talking about really watching every step. It depends where you're walking, whether you need to watch every step.
Sure.
And next thing, and people go, that is so brilliant. And I go, Okay, I'll take the compliment. It's pretty damn good. But yeah, he did that. I can't do that. He thinks different. He tries. Yes, you can. Apply wisdom of the wise and take the time. Catch yourself when you panic and say, I believe my client's right. I'm going to map it out. Why are we still right in spite of fixed fact, wrong conclusion, right conclusion, circumstance, work the problem, don't give up on it. Now, look, are there facts that would be a waste to put in? Sure. My client swore that they hadn't worked a damn day since the crash, and you find out off the books they've been working every single day. Well, now your client's a big fat liar.
Right.
Don't waste your time putting that in this problem. But these things where you really do believe your client's right. Look, they should have fixed it. My client got hurt. They're trying to get off. And I'm just not going to let them get off the hook that easy.
So when are you doing this analysis? Because it seems to me this analysis can be done before you even get involved in discovery or working up the case.
Sure, I did. Well, I did it because we had a jury we were going to pick on Monday, and I was going to try it. And I started learning the case on Thursday. And this happened, pretty early because I had about an hour on the phone, and then he was trying to hook me before he showed me that damn picture. And shit, look at this picture. But then I said, you know what? I'm not going to run away. That's not who you are. And I do believe they're at fault. Let's figure out how. And then I said, all right. And I didn't, at that point, I wasn't doing the formal wisdom of the wise steps, but that's what I did. And I realized now I'm writing this second book. I want to put that in there. And I thought I've got to turn it into a reproducible process in steps. And when I was done, I was so excited because it's like a formula. And now I do use the formula. I think that's better than my intuitive way. I'll save time. So I now use it. I've used my own system that I was doing kind of in a less formal, not formulamatic way. And now I think, why would I want to bounce around in my head till I get it? I'm doing this. Well, it works.
What I think is fascinating about it is because we always, at least I always, when I was trying cases and now as I'm consulting, I say, well, let's go through the facts that are important. Let's just write those facts out because I don't care about the 32 depositions that were taken. That's just going to screw the case up. Yep. Let's just break down fact by fact by fact. But if we do that and we even use your wisdom of the wise, you can almost do that for every fact.
You just put the good facts. I would make two categories. Winning facts, good facts. I call them defense's favorite facts.
Right.
And I say, all right, let's go down defense's favorite facts and let's run them through this process of the wisdom of wise. And let's see how many of we can own. And if we can't own them, how many of we can at least put in context where they're not going to, we're still right in spite of that. Look, that is a point for them. Trials are not won by 0 to nothing. 100 to nothing.
Right.
They're going to score some points. That's going to be a point. Why that, even though they're going to score that point, why are we still right overall? And how can I explain that to the jury? By putting it in context.
Got it.
And so you won't be able to own all their facts, but start out trying. And look, after you do this a bunch, you'll start looking and go, I'm never going to own that one. My client was convicted of 3 felonies, and the jury's going to hear about it.
It happens.
We're going to own that fact. But you know what? I can put it in context. What's the context? Okay, my client was first voir dire. My client was convicted of 3 felonies. Now, I need to ask you something. Sometimes people will say, if you're convicted of a felony, and it's only got relevance to 1 point, folks, 1, and it's whether you believe them or not. It's not supposed to be you shouldn't even be here in court.
Right.
You shouldn't even have a right to be here. What I need to know, though, is some people do feel that way, and you can have an absolute right to feel that way. How many of you say if he's been convicted of a felony? Honestly, he's in a deep, dark hole, not just on believability, on whether you even ought to be here. I'm just thinking bad about you, honestly. And it's okay if you feel that. I just need to know. And so in all honesty, you couldn't be completely fair and impartial because you're already starting out thinking my client doesn't deserve a verdict anyhow because he's a bad guy. And I get rid of those people for cause. Now we take care of one problem. Then what's left? It's the believability. Now let's talk about that. Some people hear it and say, honestly, I'm not going to believe a word comes out of his mouth. I pretty much made up my mind from that fact alone. And others would say, it's one fact. It's not the be all end all. And I'll factor it in, but he could be, very believable in spite of it, or he may not be believable, but it's just going to be a factor. It's not going to be the be all end all. Others say, in all honesty, it is kind of the be all end all with me. You might overcome it, but it's not very likely.
Right.
How many? And I find them. Now I got all the people who will truly keep it in context. Now my context will work. I got the right audience to put it in context. Then you get in context, and here's what you do with it. They're going to remember we talked about it. My client's got this felony, and my client says that his neck's hurting. And you're going to have to believe it. You're going to have to assess how that all fits with all the rest of the evidence. So let's talk about it. We got these before and after witnesses. None of them got a felony. They're going to all tell you this. But
Right.
more than that, there are two doctors I want to talk to you about. One of them is the chiropractor who felt his back and he felt muscle spasms, and you can't fake a muscle spasm. The other is the neurosurgeon who actually operated on him. He looked, there's an MRI, and the MRIs show a herniated disc. And more than that, there's increased signal. This place, these white spots you're going to hear about, that prove it was a recent onset trauma. It wasn't old. So we got new onset, and you're going to see with your own eyes the herniations, and MRIs don't lie. You're going to know about this doctor who felt the spasms, and you can't fake them. And there's another doctor. You're going to have the radiologist, and you're going to actually explain them to you. So that's three doctors: the radiologist, the chiropractor, and the neurosurgeon who actually operated, went in and saw it with his own eyes, cut it out. And when he cut it out, the burning, they didn't get rid of all the pain, but the burning down their arm went away. And so guess how many felonies that the radiologist, the neurosurgeon, and the chiropractor have? None. So sure, my client made mistakes, turned his life around, and then he got hit by someone minding his own business on random, tore up, broke a disc in his back, and he's living with that for the rest of his life. That health was taken from him, and you don't have to just take his word for it. We have all this other evidence that proves when he said it's hurting, you go, felony or not, it's hurting. So now we're in context.
Right.
I didn't own it. It wasn't a yay. I'm so
Just put it in
glad.
context, though.
But it's in context. So you make the list of the defense favored facts, figure out which one you can own by running the wisdom of the wise on it. And the ones you can't, you put them in context.
One last thing, and then because I know I've taken enough of your time up, and I apologize for that. But
This is fun.
The wisdom of the wise.
It's fun talking with someone that's lived the walk and talk the talk. And I love the audience that's saying, this is comforting to me, because that makes you and I feel good.
Absolutely. I always am torn in what I want to expose during defense depositions and discovery, and what do I want to keep in my pocket for terms of trial. The wisdom of the wise. Do you want to deal with any of that in the depositions?
It depends. That is a great question. It just doesn't I don't have a formula for that.
Right.
The answer comes from, I normally do. That's my default position. And the reason is this: they're less prepared for depositions than they are at trial.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There is no surprise like the old ambush days because of discovery. Now,
Right.
Some of the framing that you wouldn't have to tell them about. But when am I going to use it? If I used it in the opening, they're going to know, and they're going to have plenty of time before that witness comes on to figure out how to get them ready then. And guess what? I don't even know what it's going to be. So I think I spring it early. When they're unprepared, I'm more likely to get a good, helpful answer. Then I can use that in an opening. And even if they give a great answer, I know it, and I can make adjustments accordingly. If I wait and don't, we're really shooting from the hip. Now, I say usually I go that way. If I think it's something I don't have to tell them, and if it's something I think I don't give a damn what they do, they ain't wiggling out of this.
Right.
Then I think there is benefit. Oh, look, I may want to spring it to convince them they better pay more money rather than go to trial. But on the other hand, I think, look, they're never going to pay what I want. We're going to trial. They're not going to learn about it through discovery. And once they hear it in opening, I'm going to get the bang for the buck, and there's nothing they can do anyhow. Why the hell do I want to tell them in advance so they can have all the time in the world to try to file a motion in limine, try to block me, try to
Exactly.
So what I can tell people is those are the questions I ask myself. The answer varies from case to case to case to case, and circumstance to circumstance.
And lastly, I'd be remiss. I have to ask this question because all of my clients and every big case seems to go to mediation 2 and 3 times now. That seems to be the thing. The defense wants to mediate early.
Over and over.
Yeah, they have no real intent of
They want
offering you anything.
they want to get your client scared
Exactly.
and out from under your influence.
What do any of these strategies and systems that you're preaching, which I think are just phenomenal, do you use any of them at a mediation?
Sure. And again, same process. What's the risk benefit analysis to use it at the mediation? If I think we're going to trial, look, they got a 10,000 policy. We think we got them set up for excess.
Right.
We want over $1 million. That case not settling.
Exactly.
You know what I do at mediation? I go in that case and say, if I don't go to a lot of them anymore, but sometimes I get the lawyer says, will you come and, come to the mediation, and maybe me being there will help, and they're hoping it'll settle. I'm going, this ain't settling. But if I do, I would say this. If I know I'm probably not settling, you know what I do? I say, listen, you already know my case. If I just sit here and beat my chest and lay it out, you're a professional adjuster. The lawyer certainly knows that we've been to all the depots.
Right.
I don't want to waste your time. But on the other hand, if you've got a PowerPoint with something that I've got an idea what the case is worth, and it's a lot more than what y'all think it is. And that's why we have trials. On the other hand, you may have something over there that would change my mind or my clients. And I take my clients' personal opinions on this. They make the decision. I give advice. And if you got something you think may change their mind or even get to me, I would encourage you, please show the PowerPoint. Just because I don't think like you're being a jerk showing yours. You're not. It may have the intended effect. So go ahead. Because all I'm doing is like, I've got a granny cam in their office the Saturday before trial, seeing what they're going to see an opening so I can build around it. So I beg them to basically show me their cards, but I don't show them mine unless I think it's going to, maybe we do settle, then I will. There's one other hybrid to that.
Go ahead.
Sometimes I think it's never going to settle. And next thing, they're getting in a range where I go, it ain't enough, but there is now a chance to settle. And I didn't scare them enough.
Right.
You know what I do? At that point, I say, mediator, I want to go in and talk to the defense. Will you tell them I'm coming, invite me in so I can go talk to them. And then I go in and tell them, I say, listen, I got a couple of things I want to share with you that I think may change your assessment. You got great lawyers. I'm not going to spook you and you're going to run scared, but I didn't mention any of this stuff because I didn't think there was a chance of settling. I still am worried we're too far off, but for the first time, there seems to be some hope. And the only way you're going to bridge the gap that's enough to go from hope to settlement is maybe I share some things on the things you feel good about that you haven't thought about it this way. And you may think that's hogwash, but I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell the jury on some of the points you're excited about.
Right.
And then I'm going to leave the room. You don't need to tit for tat it unless you want to. I'll listen. But I just want you to, I'll leave. And then y'all think, you know what? If him saying it that way to the jury changes my confidence in those facts or that fact, then in fairness, I ought to give you the opportunity now that y'all have respected us by getting, into a range that I no longer think's ridiculous, even though it's not enough. So here it is. You're excited about this. And I know why. Here's why. But let me just tell you what I'm going to tell the jury. Boom. And then I leave the room. And you know what? That's worked quite a few times where they
I
go,
would think it would.
Next thing they come up with more money because all of a sudden their competence is a direct tie to how much they offer you. And the less confident they are on their favorite facts, the more money they're likely to pay you. So it's not an all or nothing on how you present it. Lay your cards out, play your cards close to the vest. I can always lay them out later if I thought there was no chance and now there is.
Well, Keith, as expected, that was a fun hour. And that went really, really quick.
Hey, can I add something just for the
absolutely
folks? And this is because you and I come from the same place of really trying to help as many folks as we can. I'm sitting over here in my mind. It's what made me think it before we sign off. All the things I didn't say, I would love to share with your audience. And this is what gives me peace of mind. We've talked about the books. And by the way, if you want either of the books or both, and I would highly recommend both, they work so well together. Go to trial guides. Don't go to like Amazon. They jack the price way up.
I was about to say that at the end. Absolutely.
Trial guides. Go there. That's the best place to get it. But there's a couple more of opportunities I have to get ideas out there to share beyond that I want to notify people if they're interested, and none of them cost a dime. One of them is during COVID, when trials shut down. I've now had 8 jury trials in COVID, but early days, there were, as we all know, there were none. I had to stay active. And so what I did is I got on the phone with all of our lawyers, and one at a time. Now I'm doing it in small groups, but at the time I would every half hour have a different lawyer. And all I did is bring to me cases you're worried about or repeated problems you're having. And we'd work through them together. And I give them ideas. In that process, I started having all these great epiphanies and things. And I thought, I got to get them out. And what I normally would do is I go up to New York City to a studio up there, and I do my audio podcasts. They were called brushstrokes. And it was just 10, 15, no more than 20 minutes max of me just having an individual something like some of the stuff we're talking about.
I've listened to them all, by the way.
Okay. And anybody wants, they're still out there, by the way. And we figured out, I see you got that fancy boom mic. I figured out I don't have to go to a fancy studio in New York City.
Exactly right.
I've got that boom just like that in the closet over here, and I'll pull it out. And I did the next season. So I've done one and still not gone to the studio in New York. I'll probably never go back.
Right.
And I'm doing it that way. If you want to listen to any of the past ones or the new season that I do one a month, they're called brushstrokes. Go to my website, which is keithmitnick.com. And it's not Mitnick like the first name Nick. There's no C. It's Keith, Mitnick.com. And on there, you can access the podcast. They don't cost anything. But during COVID, and I couldn't do them, and we hadn't figured out the mics thing doing for my home, I was so frustrated. I had all this new stuff, and I couldn't get it out to people. I thought, Dadgummit, this is the perfect time. No one else is trying cases. They got time to listen and read. And I figured out, Mitnick, you're being narrow-minded. You don't need a mic to do it. So I started typing them up, and I would not make them long, because I know no one wants to read 10 pages. So my commitment was no more than 3 pages. Most of them are about a page and a half. And I called them At Home, But Not Alone brushstrokes. And they're my written version of what I was doing with a
I will tell you,
I put those all on my not my website, my listserv. And I've done, I think, 40 of them. And now that I'm doing the others, I've decided I like them. I'm going to keep, I was doing one a week. Now I'm back in trials every week. I'm doing one a month, but I will keep doing them probably forever. If you want them, here's the easy access.
Go ahead.
Send me an email at kmitnick. The website with the podcast stuff is keithmitnick.com. This is different. This is just my email. kmitnick@forthepeople.com. FOR thepeople.com. kmitnick@forthepeople.com. And include, please, if you don't mind, my assistant, Mary Arnold, just because it saves me having to forward it to her. M. Arnold, like the last name Arnold, ARNOLD. M. Arnold @forthepeople.com. Send it to both and say, hey, I'd like to be on your list, sir. Thanks. I enjoyed it. She will add you. It costs nothing. And she will send you all of the past ones, and then you'll start getting the new ones. So I wanted to get that out there just because it's a resource.
It's gold is what it is.
And I'm feeling like, geez, this was fun. I enjoyed it. And we did some good work, but there's so much unsaid. In this way, I know everything I got is in your hands if you want it.
And I can tell you, for everybody who's listening, you have to, I can't say it enough. You have to not only own Don't Eat the Bruises and now Deep Cuts, but you have to read it. And when you read it, you highlight it. That way, before a trial, you can reread your highlights and makes you think of different things. At least that's always been my trick. I started it with David Ball on Damages, the first one, and I've done it with every book since then.
David's a genius.
And two, I watched the brushstrokes because it was right in COVID. I was just converting to consulting from trying cases, and I thought to myself, what can I watch? What can I read other than my experience? And I found you. And I watched them all, and they were absolutely outstanding.
Well, thank you.
Keith, thank you so much. We appreciate it. And hopefully we'll be able to do this again and talk a little bit more about the new book.
Let's set a time in the future. And thank you for having me. You have a great day.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Once again, thank you for listening. You are listening to The Jury Thinks What, a podcast by trial lawyers for trial lawyers. I'm your host, Saul Gruber at Gruber Trial Consulting, and I told you it was going to be pretty good. Keith is just brilliant. Thought process is amazing, and his way of articulating it is very enjoyable. I want to thank Keith and the gang at Morgan & Morgan for letting him come on and give out these pearls of wisdom. I mean, think about this. Why framing a case is so important. He talked about the why of whys, things you can do, not just for trial, but in discovery, and ways to maximize recovery for your client. And he just makes the trial and the ability to go to trial so easy and so systemic. It's something that is just brilliant and a treat to listen to. Again, you can get Keith's books on trial guides. You can go to keithmitnick.com and get some of his videos and brushstrokes. And it's just powerful to listen to Keith and even read Keith. Once again, this is Saul Gruber from Gruber Trial Consulting, and thank you for listening to The Jury Thinks What. And we are available on the Lawyer Minds ecosystem everywhere you get or watch your podcasts. And I hope to see everybody soon. And remember, if you have any problems, we're here.
That concludes another episode of the Jury Thinks What podcast, part of the Lawyer Minds ecosystem. Thank you for listening, and we truly hope it was worth your time. Please consider subscribing to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. Explore the other content that Lawyer Minds has to offer, and engage with us on social media. Your feedback and ideas are always welcomed. See you next time.